the Dies Irae motive being recycled. Here's another, shall we say, this is the reverse, also Sprach Zarathustra, the Aaron Copland. Fanfare for the Common Man, instead of do, so, do, we have da, 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 so, do, so, do, do, do. Lovely moonchild, and that would be Robert Fripp, the guiding force of King Crimson. Hits it big in 1969 with In the Court of the Crimson King. And the opening cut, 20th Century Schizoid Man. Gotta check it out. But you gotta track down, which is not on, as far as I can find, not on YouTube at present, the original recording to die for. Mixed meters, thrashy vocals, distorted electronic effects. What's not to like? But here now is the much more gentle. On the same album, Moonchild, which still channels much of the high tech of Robert Fripp's guitar electronic gadgetry, which became known as Frippertronics.
Dancing in the shallows of a river, lonely moon child, dreaming in the shadows of a willow, talking to the trees of the cobweb strange, sleeping on the steps of a fountain, waving silver wands to the night bird song, waiting for the sun on the mountain.
Fantasy still plays a big role in the modern world, and if you're going to channel the Lord of the Rings, the old J.R.R. Tolkien stories, and you've been hired as the film composer, and that would be Howard Shore, you better bring out your leitmotifs. After all, the Lord of the Rings, that tale of an all-powerful ring, really goes back to the same root source that we had with Wagner's Ring of the Nibelung. And a matter of fact, Howard Shore evidently has more leitmotifs than John Williams and then maybe even Richard Wagner himself in 3 movies. Make it 6 since they go back, Peter Jackson et al., to do The Hobbit as also a trilogy. So if you're in the Shire, you want to have something rather folksy. How about Do, Re, Mi, So, Mi, Re, Do, which is exactly the same solfege as a 19th century hymn, This is My Father's World, which itself is also kind of an English folk thing. And notice we've just had a tetratonic so far. Then Mi, So, La, there's pentatonic. Do, Ti, there's hexatonic. So, Mi, Fa, and that makes it diatonic. Mi, Fa, Mi, Re, leave us hanging so that the second phrase can come along. And you hear this, I think, in D major rather than E major, which is my source. That leitmotif goes back to the first movie when Frodo et al. Are still in Hobbiton. But then Gollum's theme, which is really expressed in its fullest in the credits of the second movie, has an ominous ba, 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 ba. Do, me, fa, fi, so. Very nice. And as well, third relationship, and then another third relationship a half step above. Bartok used to do things like that, and Berg in Wozzeck, the lullaby has something related. He drops down a fourth. Here it's...
Sauron's wrath will be terrible, his retribution swift. The battle for Helm's Deep is over. The battle for Middle-earth is about to begin. All our hopes now lie with two little hobbits, somewhere in the wilderness.
I wonder if we'll ever be put into songs or tales. What? I wonder if people will ever say, let's hear about Frodo and the ring. And they'll say, yes, it's one of my favorite stories. Frodo was really courageous, wasn't he, Dad? Yes, my boy. The most famousest of hobbits. And that's saying a lot. You've left out one of the chief characters. Samwise the Brave. I want to hear more about Sam. Frodo wouldn't have got far without Sam. Now, Mr. Frodo, you shouldn't make fun. I was being serious. So was I. Samwise the Brave. Spiegel? Wait.
Master. Master looks after us. Master wouldn't hurt us. Master broke his promise. Don't ask Smeagol. Poor Smeagol. Master betrayed us. Wicked, tricksy, false. We ought to wring his filthy little neck. Kill him. Kill him. Kill them both. Then we take the precious. And we'll be the master. But the fat hobbit, he knows. Eyes always watching. Then we stabs him out. Put out his eyes. Make him crawl. Yes, yes, yes. Kill them both. Yes! No, no! It's too risky, it's too risky!
Where's he going?
Follow me.
And finally, John Adams, maybe taking his own fairy tale with Peter Sellers. He writes what have now been called newsreel operas, contemporary events. And, you know, there were operas way back in the day that one could consider to be similar kinds of essays. But how about Nixon in China, taking Nixon's 1972 visit to China as its basis to make a spectacle opera, sort of in the spirit of Handel, but of course he's picking up where Glass has already established in a minimalist context. Of course, it's an opera in English, and in some ways the minimalism of John Adams is such that we get some of the comedy in the repetition of Nixon's words. We also get a fair degree of ominousness in I am the wife of Mao Zedong. And the first time I heard this, I still remember, where were you when you heard a piece of music, right? And I was in Tennessee, of all places, and I turned on the radio in my car. What are the odds I'd get a classical station? And what are the odds of hearing a soprano belled out, I am the wife of Mao Zedong? And I had read about the opera because it had been featured in Time magazine, and so I knew of it, but then hearing it, and it was wow. Wow at first hearing. What do we have in this particular excerpt? He starts the whole piece with just minimalist A minor scales running around. And there's all sorts of appealing music in the work. But focusing on this, he's in a big fat B flat major, which is a good key for brass instruments. And Adams has become known as not only the most performed classical composer living, and he lives right in Berkeley, by the way. And I had the honor of updating his article in the Grove Encyclopedia of Music. I've also done Philip Glass's, etc., etc. Just a major triad unfolding in second inversion. Do, so, mi, do, so. And he takes major and minor as being the equivalent because he darkens it up almost immediately. And it's an ABA piece, the 6/8 with dotted rhythms, da 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 da, medium tempo, well utilizing the brass and a full symphony orchestra, including a number of saxophones and synthesizer. He likes that. As a through line with later works such as Death of Klinghoffer and Dr. Atomic. Definitely a force to be reckoned with in the opera world. You'll see a scrolling score, and then the last page will be the Metropolitan Opera's production from a few years ago, which is streaming during the shelter-in-place right now, as a matter of fact, so you can check out the whole thing live on tape. The B section in particular features a lot of what's known as metric modulation, taking the impulse in one metrical value, like quarter notes, and then suddenly saying the quarter notes are now going to equal dotted quarter notes, and then we're going to have triplets. Bartok, Stravinsky, a number of composers use things like that. Probably the most famous usage, the most thoroughgoing exploration was Elliott Carter. Elliott lasted a good long time, I think till age 103. And of course there's some verbal punning too. The people hang upon my words, but you know there's probably more horrible things going on. And you'll see by the end a virtual riot which reflects back to the Cultural Revolution in 1967 in China. And we'll talk about the consequences of that later too, as a matter of fact. Madame Mao Zedong is a coloratura soprano, and she is asked to do one heck of a lot of high notes and also some very uncharacteristic leaps. I speak according to the book, and that would be Mao's Little Red Book. Typically is an ascending minor sixth. In the middle, slims that down to perhaps the even more ominous tritone. And then finally, back to it. And as well, she typically does progressively higher notes, all the way up to high D by the end. Incredible.